listening to Tech Reads, interviews with emerging technology thought leaders. Our sponsor is SoftTech, the premier technology trade association that has been serving northern Santa Barbara and San Luis Obispo County since 1997. Our mission is to create SoftTech moments where people connect, explore ideas, and create new business opportunities. Learn more at softec.org.
So this is an episode of Tech Reads, sponsored by SoftTech, and we are here with Michael Gunther. Michael, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, Michael Gunther. I'm a founder and senior consultant at Collaboration Business Consulting. I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. I grew up in a family of 16 siblings. So I have 10 brothers, 6 sisters. And if you wanted to do anything, activities, movies, you had to earn it. So
You were the youngest.
I was number 14.
Okay.
So I have 3 younger siblings. And so early on, I've always been an entrepreneur. My best friend, Sal Compitelli, and I would have every kind of business you can imagine. We had donuts, Make Sal's Donuts. We had a neighborhood newspaper, put on carnivals, all those things. And so I've always kind of had that entrepreneurial spirit.
How about your parents?
My parents, no, my mom was a housewife. Imagine with that many kids.
Mhm.
And my dad,
More than a full-time job.
yeah, my dad was a technical engineer, they called it, and he worked at ABC TV, and he used to fix all the equipment when it would break down. And they called his office the broom closet. So, and so out of all my siblings, I'm the only entrepreneur, which is kind of interesting. But I grew up, I went, put myself through high school. I went to a private high school. I put myself through a private college at Loyola Marymount. And then I got my first job out of college was with Procter and Gamble, and talk about the opposite of being an entrepreneur. And
You were a cog in a wheel, right?
I was, and I was not a good cog in that wheel. And I'll never forget, after about a year, sat down with my boss, because, life's short, you got to really enjoy it. So I went in the next day, Bob, you're right. Life's short. Here's my notice. I got to go do something else. And I got on with an amazing company about a year later called SureGuard Storage Centers. And we became the second largest storage operator in the country. They're very entrepreneurial. The guy who started as a history teacher, and we all earned shares and stock in the company. And by 28, I was one of their regional vice presidents, or I was the Southeast. I ran a $40 million division. They loved education. They paid for my master's in psychology, got certified on Myers-Briggs. They're
Good
amazing.
old corporate days.
Yeah, it was an amazing organization. And so after we went public, I told my boss, I'm going to leave after we go public. The company was getting too big for me. And so we went public, and next day I gave my notice and started Collaboration back in 1994 in Atlanta, Georgia. And they were my first client. They called me up on the Monday after I left and said, hey, can you help us with some projects? So they actually helped fund my business first couple of years.
That makes a big difference.
Yeah.
In fact, I'd say that's a common thread I hear from a lot of entrepreneurs is you still got to have that one anchor to help you get off the ground. Even when I started my business, I think it was one of my interviewees offered to buy like 400 books. And he said, is that enough to help you get started with this idea? And I said, let's do it. So, that little seed led to something much bigger. So that's great.
Yeah, so it was interesting. I had met this woman named Kathleen Asker, and she mentored under Michael Gerber, who wrote the E-Myth.
I interviewed Michael.
Yeah, and so she trained me how to use all my knowledge and create a consulting business. And in Atlanta, I did a little bit different. I would take on a key role and then find my replacement. So the last job, I ran a software company for about 3 years, built the management team, found my replacement, and decided to move back to California. And they wanted me to continue running it. And I said, no, I'm going to go build my own business. And moved here in 2003, didn't know anybody except our realtor, was the only person we knew.
Mm-hmm.
And decided I wanted to work with small businesses and entrepreneurs and really help them have an impact. And I was missing it as I got larger companies. I wasn't seeing my impact. And so that was kind of how Collaboration Business Consulting got started here in 2003. It's been 20 years. I can't believe it.
And pretty much just been slowly, organically growing all that time. Have you gone through any like,
We're like anybody else, that roller coaster of growth,
especially like back in 2008, 2009? With
Yeah,
that?
it was interesting. To that time, we had a lot of people coming to us for different issues. And our projects were much smaller. And so we had a lot of volume, but smaller projects.
Okay.
And I was no different than any other entrepreneur. I was going through my own struggles. I'm teaching everyone how to build their businesses. I'm going, it's like the college kids doesn't have shoes. I was kind of like, why can't I build my business at the same pace that I'm helping everyone else build their business? And so I went through all those same challenges and struggles, to the point that in 2013, my husband and I decided to take a sabbatical. It was our 20-year anniversary, 10 years of being in town. I thought when I came back, I was going to close the doors. I was just burnt out. I just lost the core of what I love to do.
Well, and a lot of people stay there for a long time, right? But how do you get out of that burnout? Like they talk about burnout, but they never talk about what happens if you don't get out of burnout.
Yeah, I can tell you, if it wasn't for that sabbatical, those 8 weeks off, I think I would have closed my doors that year.
Okay.
And I'm working on my next book right now is called The Sabbatical. And how to make that happen, even small sabbaticals as well as large. But our minds need a break. And I was off the grid the whole time we were gone. So I had no email, no TV, didn't read papers.
Did you walk the Camino?
Yeah, no, we should have. We did a lot of walking and drinking in Europe. But about midway through, I realized I actually liked what I did, but I lost the vision of why I was doing it. And I got caught up in a software tool called Work Traits. Many people know. We're its largest reseller of that tool. It was going to be my reoccurring revenue, right? That was a big thing for everyone to create. But we're not a software company. We're a consulting firm. And so when I came back, we ended that relationship. We got back focused on consulting. And quite honestly, we now are at 5 times larger revenue, been most consistent. So we grew this year 35%. And I sit back and it's like, gosh, I'm working less, I have a smaller team. And we are just, every year, we've just been growing and getting better. And part of it is I needed a break to step back and remember what's important and why we were doing what we were doing.
The big picture stuff.
The big picture stuff, but then how do you implement it? And so I think that was also what made me write Me to We.
Right. So the book we're talking about today is Me to We. And Michael published this a couple of years ago during the pandemic. I was at his book launch. He still pulled it off, but kind of a tough time to launch a book. I won't lie. Everyone was struggling with that. But it definitely resonated with me because I've been a solopreneur for 15 years and I've failed like a lot of other people. I mean, granted, my business model maybe doesn't lend itself to scaling, but at the same time, this whole idea of going from me to we appeals to a lot of people like me. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about how this came to be and what you hope people
one of my goals was to write a book one day. It was on my list. I don't know why, but I know I'm going to write a book one day. And so I think it was the sabbatical I took got me clear on what I wanted to write about and kind of my own journey. But when I came back, we've worked with 650 organizations, 5,000 leaders. And we started to look at, I was curious, why do some organizations, when we stop working, continue to grow and thrive and others don't? And why do some leaders, we work with them and they just can thrive and others don't? So it was just this curiosity. So we went and started to research past clients and look at everything from personality styles and why did they come to us in the first place and what were their presenting issues. And we did some research with Northwestern, Harvard, trying to understand why some business owners can really build their dream into a reality and others never get beyond that dream. And I was going through the same thing. So it was kind of, as we were going through this research, I was starting to look at it internally as well. And I call it, you may have heard this term, but why the entrepreneur is killing their business. And because an entrepreneur, you manage everything, you do everything. No one could do it like you do it.
Your backpack gets heavier and heavier.
Yeah, and no one can do it like you do it. They don't have by experience. How could they do consulting like I do? I have all this other experience and knowledge, and so. But I learned that we have to become leaders of thriving businesses. So it requires this transition to happen. Part of it's your ego. I call it chasing sexy. So entrepreneurs are usually creative folks, and
you get a lot of accolades, right, for being the guy in charge. That validates your ego, sort of boosts your ego.
Every decision, I'm the problem solver.
Right.
There's a great book by Greg McKeown called Essentialism, and he studied all the companies during the dot-com boom and bust of the late
dot bomb
of the late 1990s, early 2000s, and he found that the leaders that really learned how not to be the problem solver, but to teach other people to be problem solvers were the companies that thrived. But think about it. You get promoted or your success comes from you making decisions and from you moving things forward. But you can't, all of a sudden you become the bottleneck because everybody's been coming to you. Your company's too big. We see this all the time. These companies can't get beyond a certain layer of growth and they're just stuck. And part of it is the owner, the leaders are not shifting how they're managing. And it's a hard thing for people to shift. Because sometimes they don't know what their new job is. All of a sudden, wait, that was all my task. Other people are doing it. What's my role here?
And they're consumed by their business, right? Like that is their identity.
Yes, it is. And so it's the journey to the book was really about trying to outline some of these things that hold people back to build and help people to build a thriving environment.
And it's a mindset, right? I mean, it's a shift. I used to say, there's the employee and there's the owner. And like to make that shift from employee to owner, it's a huge shift of beliefs. I mean, it's almost hard. A lot of people can't make that shift.
Well, and a lot of people want their employees to act like owners. But if they could do everything you could do, they'll probably go start their own business, right? The goal is, and a lot of people don't want it. I've had so many clients want to give their people ownership or equity. People are like, I don't want that responsibility, but they want to get behind a big dream or a vision. And so when we did all this research, we did discover, to me, all the things that either break or build trust within that working relationship. Because at the end of the day, if you're going to grow a business, you need people who are dedicated to your vision, that are going to help drive it. Greg Hine, who's a local entrepreneur for many years ago, was passed probably a decade or so ago. I'll never forget, he came and spoke to a group I was leading, and he was said, because everyone's like, I don't want to manage people. And he goes, look, it's never easy, but if you have this big dream, you're going to have to learn how to.
He had a vision bigger than himself.
That's right. And so that was part of it. And in order to do that, what are you doing to build trust with those folks? And there's 7 core things that are either breaking or building trust. And so part of the book begins to define what those are. Think about this. Employees come to you and they have armor on. They've worked elsewhere, maybe with bad leaders or challenging leaders, and the trust may not be there. And their goal is to hopefully take that armor off. But if we don't do things a certain way or treat them a certain way, they get chinks in that armor to a point where they want to leave the organization. And I know it's kind of cliche to say, no, it's all about the people, but the reality is, I tell these business owners, these people are building your wealth. And this is the way you're treating them. These people want to help you get their dream and vision together, but you're not giving them any direction or accountability. And so it's been an interesting journey. And these 7 core areas, they're not complex things, but they're hard to apply. And I want to address one other thing you talked about, Brian, too, is behavior. Now, all of us on our team have psychology backgrounds, either undergrads or masters. Okay. And so we either have a master's in psychology or business, but our undergrads either in business or psychology. Half the work we do, we can give you all the processes, the tools, the systems, almost, my team thinks it's like 60, 70% we do. actually trying to get leaders to be better people and leaders and change their behaviors, change the way they communicate, and really move forward on building that team that they've always envisioned.
Which takes time.
Takes time, which
framework,
entrepreneurs are impatient.
Yeah, and a framework, let's just put this in place and all of a sudden start to see some changes, right?
Yeah.
But the soft skills and the mindset and the psychology piece, I'm sure, takes some time, and even still is probably continually correcting what's going on, and what are you using, like feedback and
Yeah, we try to measure everything. So through that whole research, we created what we call the collaborative leader assessment. It's a 360 assessment based on those 7 core areas that are breaking or building trust. And so we're able to measure, is the leader getting better in managing, leading the organization? And then we do all the other measurements. Is their profit growing? Is their debt going down? Are their sales consistent? And so one thing we know, and it's kind of interesting. I almost think of ourselves as implementation consultants, because a lot of consultants can come in and tell you what's not working and assess, but we really say, okay, how do we now implement and make the changes? And then how do we measure to make sure those changes are done? And you know what? Good employees want accountability to measurements. We have found time and time again, like people have a hard time holding people accountable, but employees want to be held accountable, because for those people that aren't performing, they're going, I'm being treated the same as this person who's not performing. So why should I perform? And so people want accountability in the workplace. It shows up constantly.
Well, it's a fairness, right? This fairness. The big corporations. I mean, I worked at IBM for a while, and that was one of the main reasons I left, is the fact that people were taking credit for things they didn't do, and the people who were actually doing the work that weren't good playing politics or self-promoters got passed up for promotions and didn't get the credit,
right?
Because they didn't take the credit, but they did the work. And if you were looking at the metrics closely, you would know who was the first account manager who went into that account, who grew that account, not the person who came in later.
So that's also, I think it gets back to the leader's role. There's a little diagram we have, and it's not, we've manipulated over the years, but it comes from many sources. Situational leadership has one similar, but it talks about your role as you grow in the organization, how much should be on strategy and developing your people, and how much are your day-to-day technical tactics that you're doing. So the day-to-day technical is very small. It's mostly strategy, what's going on in the marketplace, how is our business doing? Do we need to change that? Are we headed in the right direction? And the other part is, how are my people doing? What am I doing to develop them? And so without clear one-on-ones, getting together where you are in the numbers, coaching them through. We had a client once, their sales were down 43%. And the owner came to us and they wanted to fire the whole sales team. We're going to just start over. It's the sales team.
Clean slate.
Clean slate. And so I met with the sales team people, the whole great team. There's 10 of them. Good people. They were lacking coaching, structure, accountability, goals. We started bringing those in. They ended up growing from about 9.5 million to 20 million over a 2-year period. Not a single salesperson had to leave. And we got rid of the sales manager who was managing them, because there's no management or accountability going on. And I think the term management means to manage. So if you're a manager, most people don't want to manage. They think it's micromanaging. But if you're managing towards an outcome, and if you're not achieving your outcome, what needs to change? Is it a skill, process, or strategy? And most leaders don't realize that's the role that they could be playing. Business owners, I think, miss the boat all the time. They don't have time. Look at the 2008 recession, the Great Recession, right? How many business owners waited to make the tough decisions? And the 2008 recession, it was, if you were paying attention, you knew it was coming.
Mm-hmm.
It actually started December of 2007. We didn't feel it to 2008. There's a company I know that the gentleman was reading a newspaper on a plane, and this was in 2005, and seeing everything that was going on. And there were some stats he was reading about housing and the market. He goes, "Oh, this is changing. He went and sold his business. They're a big home builder, sold his business, sat with that money, and in 2010 started buying up all these commercial properties that were going under, all these other things, because the stats were there. And so when I think of business owners who are in the day-to-day, when I talk about strategy, they need to be spending their time also strategy, what's going on in the marketplace. So like we have clients, we're looking, what are the key indicators on a national level, on a local level that they need to be looking at on a quarterly basis that may impact their business. And so I'm trying to get them to be proactive and looking 12, 24 months out saying, hey, this is happening.
Right.
What can we do now? If the market's shifting or our regulations shifting, what do we need to do to be competitive and be able to stay? And so that's where the owner's role needs to shift. And I don't think most people know how to do that. Again, we're used to tactical doing things.
Right. So we've got a live studio audience in the room, and I want to give you guys an opportunity to thank you for coming today. If you have any questions, because Michael's been through so much and he has helped, I'm hoping to touch on some of the companies he's helped take to like the next level. Hathaway specifically is one that I'm very impressed with what you guys did there. But why don't you chime in and ask Michael one of your own questions? Jeff, you've known him for a while.
Yeah, and frankly, I don't have a lot of questions because Michael's helped me grow several companies and it's been more
Proof is in the
just
pudding.
recently helping us with the Chamber of Commerce and some of our big questions for the future there. Yeah, and I've just been a beneficiary of Michael's work for many, many years and really appreciate
Anything that stood out specifically that he's touched on over the years that you sort of have stuck out about his approach?
Well, I love, to me, it's a healthy way to grow and develop a company. You know, just everything you've just been talking about. It's just like music to my ears, you know, taking care of people, taking care of customers, driving accountability, telling the truth to each other, and, you know, admitting your mistakes, admitting when not doing the right thing, try to move on to the next thing. You know, so many conversations you and I've had over the years, and you and your team have helped us as we've had to, you know, hit these roadblocks and try to move beyond those. And so, and I love the approach. I think
Jeff reminds me of the concept, let go of your ego, basically. Instead of your ego, let go of your ego.
And he's our secretary, yet he's a president of a company. So I'm always impressed with Jeff because he has no ego.
But it's an important thing because as a business owner, we have an ego, right? We're starting it. It's our idea. We're building it. You bring up Hathaway. I just had coffee with Jesse, and Jesse did not have an ego. He was competitive. He wanted to grow it, but his first focus was how well his team was going to do and his people, and then how well his customers are doing. And he didn't have this ego. I see so many business owners where their ego gets in the way of making change. And I think some of those things Jeff highlighted is that, let go of your ego. It's a hard thing for people to do.
Meg, do you have any questions or comments for Michael?
Like Jeff, more some commentary. So I won't name any specific companies for confidentiality reasons, but unless you'd like me to. But I've been the beneficiary of Michael and his team's involvement in two different mid-sized companies, both with some similarities, some different ones. And I found it tremendously helpful personally and organizationally because you touched on things. There's strategies important. There's having the right skill set. Michael happened to be my personal counselor, if you will, consultant. We teamed up different managers with different people on this team to kind of look at my skill set and, what really did I need to develop to grow into my management position. But then also the interpersonal aspect and, whether it was a particular tool that you used to get there or just experience helping people understand how they come into a situation and how this other person comes into a situation and how you can work together better if you understand those perspectives. So that that interpersonal piece. And so I love the layering of looking at infrastructure, looking at strategy, looking at skill set, looking at personality, looking at management style. And then Michael and his whole team really had a nice touch when it came to, you know, tamping down those egos a little bit and kind of pulling out people who, you know, don't tend to talk. So it's been a very good experience. So that's it for now. I'm going to think more about questions.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Vlad, thanks for your input, Blake, based on what you've heard.
Yeah, well, first, as a natural born contrarian, I almost never say this sentence. I agree with everything you've done. I really appreciate your perspective. I have a question for you. I was meeting with an entrepreneur a couple of weeks ago. This guy's had his company for about 6, 8 years.
Mhm.
They just closed a substantial round. They have 130 employees. And with that round closing, of course, they're tasked with 10xing, 20xing that company. And he asked about motivating the team, you know, my philosophy on keeping the team motivated. My instant gut response was humans are generally motivated by stories, by goals, by human connection, and not by numbers. If you get up there every month and just say, you know, bigger, better, faster is our goal, you know, which he'd been kind of doing, I said, I don't think that's going to really motivate your team. So I'm curious to know if you agree with that, or what your advice is for somebody that's in that position that to keep that team motivated.
Yeah, so it's a two-part answer for you. First one is, I don't think you can motivate anybody. All you can do is create a motivating environment. And part of that environment is what you're referring to. In fact, at the very top of the 7 core areas, either break or build trust, is vision and goals. People want to be part of something greater than themselves.
Yeah.
They want to know that what they're doing, no matter what their roles. I was in self-storage. Okay, not a very sexy industry. But we had everybody bought into that we were going to be the best in the industry, service focused first. We all became owners. I mean, everybody, everything we did was living towards this vision, this mission, and these goals. It was an amazing experience. And so I think with a really clear vision, we find a lot of times people are just kind of in the day-to-day, but they don't feel like the company's moving ahead or forward because they don't have anything to attach to. So if we have a really clear vision, this is where we want to go the next 5 years. This is how we want to operate from a mission and core values. Now, how do we get there? And get the team then focused on how do we get there part, and that gets the team motivated. But you need that direction. And that at the end of the day, you all seen the surveys. I mean, SHRM, Society of Human Resource Management, does the surveys every year. Pays like down at number 8 or 9 on the scale of motivation. Gallup does a poll every year on employee satisfaction. 70% of employees will leave for less money for a better manager. And so part of it is having that vision, those goals, and then making sure the managers are focused on what are people's actions going, helping us get there, and tying that connection. Hey, thanks for the way you handled that customer.
Yeah, how am I contributing?
Yes, and
How am I
the
making
way you
impact?
just dealt with that customer is helping us get to this goal. But people need time. I think we live in a world where keeping busy at work is what we grew up with. And I think managers need time to be having those conversations and making sure people are feeling they have that impact as well. So you're exactly right, Blake. I think it is that vision. I'm a big believer though, you know, I've seen people try to motivate people with money or better benefits or all those
Promotions,
promotions, all those
Feed their ego.
equity, shares, all that matters. But at the end of the day, people want to know they're contributing beyond themselves and they're creating something larger than what they can create by themselves. And the best leaders I've seen are able to do that. You know, Rick Stillmeyer had this vision of where he wanted to go, or Jesse at Hathaway, or even like Derek Johnson, our local city manager. He has a vision what he's been trying to do with the city, making it bike friendly.
And he stays true to that,
That's right.
despite all the
All the things that can
pressure to
distract
pull
you.
you out of it. I mean,
That's
think
correct.
of all the opportunities that a company goes through on the way, because I believe in you don't die from lack of opportunities, right? You die from going after every opportunity.
Yeah, I don't know if you ever read the book Small Giants. And it was companies who chose to stay small. And small, even like Cliff Bars was an example. You know, he was supposed to sell the Quaker Oats. And they're about to sign the paperwork, and they're about 100 million at the time. And he walked around the block and decided, came back and said, nope, I want to stay smaller. I like what we have. And he had to buy his partner out. There's all these legal issues, but they did it. But there's a quote in the book, I'll never forget, it says, the business you say no to is more important than the business you say yes to. And there's always opportunity. And I think it's about finding the right opportunity, and saying no to things. And I think it's hard as small business owners too, as you're growing. You need revenue, you know, so you say yes to a lot of things. But if you look at the stages of growth, by the time you get the growth and rapid growth, you have to have narrowed your niche. This is who we service. These are people we don't service. And even our own company. We helped start 275 local businesses here. But I was on the committee that was creating the hot house and knowing they were coming. And I said, well, that's not a place for us to play anymore. You know, and so we had to even shift our model and to do that. And we don't work with startups anymore. You know, all our businesses have to be multi-million, and we think they can be 10 or greater.
Find your niche and stick to it.
Yes, yeah.
Can I ask a follow-up to that?
Yeah.
Have you seen a situation where a leader has kind of lost the team? Maybe they were in the catbird seat with their company and they were rolling along, and where they kind of lost the team, and what precipitated that?
When you say lost or being held so.
Meaning failed to start to motivate them or create a vision, or, you know, to keep them rolling, and you saw things kind of crumble or fall
I
apart.
think it's having to get back to why they're doing what they're doing. I think there's a thing in America, right? You look at all the Inc. magazine, Forbes, who do they highlight? The rags of riches, and when from here
The
to
renegade.
the renegade,
Yeah.
the unicorns out there.
Right.
And what happens, I see a lot of times, people just focus on the numbers, the money.
Right.
And money's an output.
It's a result.
It's a result. And I think what happens, right, if I start seeing a separation, it means that the person is probably focused on the wrong things with their team. Again, not knowing all the specifics, but
We'll look at Carly Fioroni in HP. She was focused 100% on that end game.
that's
She
right.
destroyed an entire company's culture, because I was part of that
Yeah.
collateral damage at IBM. I mean, there were thousands of people who lost their jobs because of Carly.
Yeah.
I will never support her in any way, shape, or form, because I saw what she did to HP firsthand, but she was focused 100%, no matter what, to get to that outcome.
And it's not sustainable. You think about that. So HP's had some rough roads, and there was a study done, companies that hired MBAs out of like the top schools had worse sustainability than other companies, because the MBAs go right to the financials. What can we do to increase short-term value? Because that's how they're being
Give me an
rewarded.
objective. I'm going to get.
That's right. I always think of Jim Collins and his 20-mile march, right? And just being consistent and going. And so I think companies, if I see a separation like that, there's probably a separation in the culture of why are we doing what we're doing and what really matters anymore? Are we really staying true to our mission? Are we just doing things to make sure we hit the bottom line?
Well, yeah, it has the objective change, because I think when a leader, all of a sudden there's kind of an exit, and they're going to get there no matter what. And I worked for a company where come hell or high water, he was going to get to that. We didn't really know what was happening. And then when the company sold, we all said, oh, that explains why he was telling us to say whatever we had to say to make the sale, even if we couldn't do it. That's when I had to step out. Like, my integrity was in check here, because you're telling us to tell our customers to do things that we don't know how to do.
Yeah.
You know, throw your hat over the fence and go get it. But at some point, there's a whole field of hats, and your confidence that we can actually go get that hat starts to fall off.
Yeah.
You know, when I interviewed all these entrepreneurs, one thing I can share that I, as a sales rep, worked with sort of middle management, upper management, and that's where all the egos were. It was once I got beyond that and went to talk to the owner, because I interviewed them about founding the company, that there was no ego. And if there was another name for the book, it was going to be, It's Not About the Money. But my thought was, well, nobody's going to buy a book. It's not about the money, because it's all about the money. And so I didn't call it that, but that was the one common thread with all these business owners I talked to, is if you'd offered them $1 million tomorrow, they'd say, no, I'm not here for that reason. You know, whatever the number is. And maybe they do have a number, right? Jesse had a number.
Right.
But it wasn't the reason they came to work. So Rick and Bob have been patiently listening on the phone attentively. I want to give you guys an opportunity to ask Michael anything you want. Bob, you're never at a loss for words, except when you're muted.
Except when I'm muted. There you go. I really don't have any questions. I mean, I've heard really great things about Michael from all the people in the CEO roundtables over the years. So there's an impressive track record there that I think is something to be encapsulated and preserved somehow. And I hope the book is a step in that process. I think the difficulty I have with some of the things when we talk about it is that things get put out there as the answer, and it's almost always a balance between that answer and 14 other answers that go on the other side of the equation. And far too often, I see people that are striving for one particular outcome, and they might get that outcome, but the unintended consequences are drastic. And I don't think a lot of times people think, for every objective that I put out there that I want to go get, there's something else attached to the other end of that string. And you better know what that is. And so I get leery of and this is the right way. I don't think there's right ways and wrong ways. There's just balances for a particular culture.
Yeah, it's interesting. To me, Bob, at the end of the day, again, it's about relationships.
Mhm.
And it's how those leaders are working with the people on their team to help them achieve their objectives. That's what leadership is getting things done through others. And so part of it is creating the culture. Part of it is it's a complex thing. If it was easy, everyone would be doing it, right? But I do think it's getting clear on the why of what we're doing it and what our true motivation is. If its true motivation is money, there are many companies out there that people love working for companies like that. And it's the culture, and that's all their focus is. And so I do think it starts with the entrepreneur and getting really clear on what matters to them and what are they trying to create, and then trying to attract those people around that. It's a complex. There's no right answer. I call it the book of the month club management, where people
We do
go,
this year. This is our.
I read this book,
Yeah.
and now this is what we need
It's
to
the
do.
answer.
Or I go to a seminar, and now this is what we're going to do. And so every month is like strategy shift. And I think leaders need to get clear on what their style of leadership is, the type of leader they want to be, and how they're going to operate. Then all the books just add to help support that versus changing direction. I think a lot of people it gets messed up because employees are going, oh, they're going this way. Oh, now we're shifting here. And so it tells me the leader isn't clear on what they're really trying to do as well.
Can I add it's slightly follow-up question? I agree with you, Bob. There's no one answer. Back to this issue of motivation and vision that starts with the leader. I struggle with that one a little bit, having been, in one organization that I think struggled to define that, in part because, in this economy, we're one of, many companies doing ABC. And so what is the vision? Is it's hard to define. We're doing it better, or we're doing it for a higher purpose when 6 other companies are doing a similar thing. So that's part of the question. The second question is, now for myself, as still pretty much a solo entrepreneur, my company is still small. My motivation for doing what I'm doing originally started with an idea that came from my father, and I worked for other organizations helping them be successful in marketing, and I wanted to take something that was my own and bring it to fruition. So that was the motivation. Well, now I'm doing that thing, and that can no longer be the motivation or the vision. The vision is what that thing does, which is help people be independent and active. But I struggle because I've got to motivate myself, and I've got to do still a lot of the implementation. And so I have this dichotomy of motivation of how I'm helping my customers and making their lives better, but I'm also, the business side of it, and I have to look at the numbers. So if you have any insights about, what is that vision, and is it always some lofty thing, or is it something small, or is it not necessarily even a clearly articulated thing, but how we're going to operate? It's our value set.
Yeah, I think there, and those words all get mixed in together, don't
Yes.
they? Mission, vision, value, strategy,
Right.
purpose, right? I think there's to me, a mission statement, some people call it a vision statement, to me is part of, like, we want to inspire, educate, and empower proactive leaders for breakthrough performance. So that's what we're doing. And then we have our core values, we operate our four core values. What I call vision is, so then in order to do that, what do we do? What are we doing the next 3 to 5 years? And what are we trying to have that impact? And there's the financial piece, it's the type of customers we want to work with, it's
Sustainability, right?
sustainability, how do you stay relevant?
Yeah.
Relevancy to me has always been for any organization. And professional services, especially AI is coming, we can't trust everything on AI yet, but you will one day. And so how do we stay relevant with that? And so part of it is trying to make sure that your mission could be that you want to help people. But then what's your vision? What do you want out of the business? What are you trying to create? What are you hoping to create out of this? And again, I always look at what you want your role to be, what do you want your culture to be, financially, what do you want, sales and marketing, what do you want your reputation in the marketplace to be? Then based on that, how do you build an implementation plan to make that happen? The other thing you talked about, Meg, was 6 of you in the marketplace playing, selling the same service offering, and we're all saying we have the best service. There is, I think a lot of companies don't get clear enough on who their ideal client profile is. Think about hamburgers. Whoever thought like Five Guys and Habit and Smashburger and Shake Shack, when always McDonald's and Burger King, Wendy's were already here. There's always someone else taking it and redefining it and looking at the marketplace. And I think companies don't spend enough time as they're growing to redefine who they're going after. We have a whole list of, we have probably 25 pain points. If it's a sales and marketing issue, if you're dealing with these pain points, you're a right fit for us. Management issues, if you're dealing with one of these pain points, you're the right fit. What we learned is that when we don't get the right fit, it's costly, right?
So you got a list of criteria that you check.
And we interview people when they come to us. Are they the right fit for us? And I can tell you, when it is, I could pull out a proposal right here and say, and they're, oh my God, you got right exactly what we were talking about. But part of it is, I don't think enough people spend time on understanding what are they really solving, who is it, and who's not our customer. And I see sometimes everyone could be our customer. Yeah, but no. Not unless you're a city and delivering water.
Well, would you consider yourself a people pleaser though? Because if you want to please everyone, then when someone comes to you for help, you're going to figure out how to help them.
I do, but we send them to SVDC, we send them to the HUD House, we have a lot of past consultants who are operating here that have relationships, send them to different consultants that I know that can help them. So we'll always have a resource. That doesn't mean we have to do that. And I think one of my sabbatical made me realize that. We had taken a lot of clients on to feed the beast, and so we lost who our ideal client. And it makes it easier when we're competing against other folks and we're not the right fit for everybody. And so I think that's the other thing. I think businesses as they grow, and remember that strategy of the business owner where they need to be spending their time. So that part of it is a strategy, and that's, gosh, are we targeting the right audience? Has that shifted for us? When was the last time we really looked at that? What's going on in the marketplace? Maybe we're missing some new opportunities in the marketplace. Those are the thinking things that the business owner should be doing instead of doing things within the business. Would be an example.
Well, and you did
Michael,
go ahead, Bob.
I wonder if I could ask a question to Michael on having to do with the transition of people from the educational model to the business model when they make that transfer over from one domain to the other. And specifically, what I'm talking about is that in school, you're taught to be the smartest kid in the class. You're independent, you're an independent worker. And in the business world, you're taught to be the best team on the field. And they're two radically different cultures. And I wonder if you could talk about how, especially things coming up like through the hot house and that kind of stuff, that stays kind of academic till it comes into market contact,
Mhm.
at which time they get an attitude adjustment. But I
Yeah.
wonder if you could talk about that a little bit of how businesses can remake that culture as it comes across from the one right answer, smartest kid in the class to, it's about the team.
Yeah, probably why growing up with 16 siblings and calling my company name Collaboration, it's that my belief, the only way I could survive in my household, I had to get along with a lot of personalities, right? And I think our schools, management theory, just understanding how to manage was 100 years old in 2018. And so if you look at management theory in the 60s and 70s, you had Maslow and Rogers, and they started to bring the humanistic side to management, which wasn't there before. It was always you're a cog, it's what you do. And so what's happened, our culture also has landed on the old management style. Think of Gordon Gekko from
Wall Street.
Wall Street.
Yeah.
Greed is good. It's about me, and But the reality is, it's culturally shifting. And if you look, the desire for people to want to work together and have longer term success has shifted. And so it's a new study of management. It's been around for about 10, 15 years. But part of that is we still have baby boomers. We have different generations within the workplace that only know a certain way. And if you want a sustainable business, if you want a good culture with low turnover, if you want to get exceptional results, you have to be collaborative. And it's hard because our economic or academic institutions don't necessarily teach that. And I think that's one of the challenges. And so then they come into a workplace and wait, I thought this was about me. Now it has to be about we,
Where's my trophy?
Yeah, where's my trophy? You mean I have to participate and be held accountable by my peers? And I think it's a cultural shift, Bob, and it all starts with the business owner. I can go into an organization, and if it's not operating well, I always go right to the top. And it starts up there. And the desire to build a collaborative environment is a lot of work. It takes a little bit longer. It's not consensus decision making, but people willing to work together. And it takes a lot of development. Most of us don't know how to communicate. Most of us don't know how to have healthy conflict in the workplace.
Most of us aren't patient enough.
Aren't patient enough. There's a whole thing called 5 behaviors. It came off of Patrick Lexions's book, and about these 5 behaviors of building trust, holding people accountable, holding them to their commitments, and having healthy conflict. And I don't think people know how to do that. We're not taught that. Because those are the things that create collaboration in the workplace. And so I think the proactive leaders that really want to create an amazing, profitable organization and not struggle as much, have to be collaborative. And their skills, they're going to need to learn that they probably didn't learn in school. I can't even tell you how many people we've worked with that have their MBAs or have done other stuff, and they're like, they didn't teach us any of this in school. They taught us theory, and most of the school is built for big corporations. They're not teaching you what it is to run a business.
They want you to be an employee. They want you to be a good employee.
That's right. Don't challenge status quo.
No, and I will say that I learned more in my first year of business than I learned 10 years leading up to it. So when you are thrown out there and you're the guy in charge, you have to learn how to adapt so quickly.
Yeah.
Versus an employee, you're told to be in this one place. That's not your job. Don't do that. You have to unlearn so much to make that leap from employee to employer.
Yes.
It's insane.
I'm curious about the shift from kind of a morass to clarity. That's one of the things I always enjoyed about working with collaboration is we would be grappling with something and your team was always able to come in and work with us and just cut right to the chase. It would just clear the fog and get to, here's what we're talking about here.
To me, Jeff, whether it's us or someone else, having the outside perspective. Because I'm not caught up in the day-to-day and all the personality dynamics
Yeah.
and all the other baggage that's there.
Mhm.
We always come in and say, what are we really trying to solve here? You know, and so everyone's telling us and we land on, oh my God, yes, but I think it's sometimes having that outside perspective just gives, that's why people go to counselors or whatever, anything, because you need that outside perspective when you're in the middle of it.
So just curious, like if in your business of collaboration, if you get yourself into a situation like that, which I'm sure you do, like everyone, how do you handle that?
It's a good question. I belong to a CEO roundtable group. I also have had many mentors. Unfortunately, one just passed away. I'm going to Seattle next week, but from Suregard, one of my early mentors just passed. But you need, I think business owners have to be open to realize they don't have all the answers. It's an ego thing again. We're supposed to have all the answers. We're at the top. Everyone comes to us.
You're
with
the
answers.
expert at the
How
table.
am I, if they come to me and I don't know, oh my gosh. But the reality is, we don't have all the answers. And the more you're open to that, your employees will help you find the answers. Outside resources will. But I think people have to let go of, they don't need to have all the answers, but the answers out there. I always say the answers in the room. So if I'm with a company and there's an issue going in, I don't necessarily need to know that, but I know the answer is in this room. Like getting everyone together, we can figure out what the resolution is and not having to feel like I have to have the answer.
One last question, because we're
And
getting
Brian,
up on
did
our hour.
Rick get a chance to talk?
No.
Okay, well,
Mike,
we should exercise our manners.
this was good, Mike. Thanks for participating.
Rick.
The first thing I'm going to do is go get a copy of the book.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that, Rick.
No matter what you think or how well you think you're doing something, the more you think you are doing great, the more you really need somebody else to take a peek at it. So this is good. I myself started a few companies. I'm from here, grammar school, high school, Cal Poly a couple of times. Spent a number of years with a great idea in a company and never really shared anything and thought I'd go somewhere. That burned out about after 3 times. And about 20 years ago, I took one of my technologies and focused in a certain area. And I realized by then I'd really gone nowhere by myself. It took a while to really recognize that. So what I've done, not the same as you, because I don't have people that work for me here, they're in other countries. I have board of directors. I found the best people in each area. And I send out an email every week saying, here are my plans, here's what I'm doing. It's just like having partners that are smarter than me giving their input. And that's how I've gone forward. But the fact is, I still want to read your book.
Well, I think you bring up a good perspective, Rick, too. Get a board of advisors of people. I had a board of advisors of early on with people with total different personality and perspectives than me. Chris Yetter, Rob Garcia, Lee Johnson. I just have these folks. I needed your perspective because it's different than mine.
Yeah.
You have to be open to take that criticism and input and feedback.
That's right. And understanding that I need a different view than mine. And so I think that's wise to have the board of advisors. So anything getting insight from outside and being open to that. Being willingness to ask for help is huge.
Well, and the last question I wanted to ask, thank you, Rick. That was a very insightful.
So where do I get the book?
It's on
Can
Amazon.
I order it online?
It's a really good deal on Amazon.
It is a really good
It's like
deal.
$5 for the hardcover book.
Yeah.
So grab them while they're still in stock.
They are.
And he's probably got some down here in the office.
I do have some here.
Okay.
As
Come
well.
to the front desk. What I wanted to ask you, kind of the last question, because I think there's another meeting in here once. So we need to be sensitive to that. Is there anything you learned from writing the book that you kind of didn't come clear to you until you had gone through that effort?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I learned I was really hard on myself for many, many years about my view of lack of success. Everyone thought, oh, what successful he is. And yet there's many years I wasn't taking home income. I was paying it out.
If they really know the truth.
Yeah. That old imposter syndrome. And I think going through the book and the research we did, and I realized that I was just on my own entrepreneurial journey. And just because I was on my journey didn't mean I couldn't help others on their journey. And so that imposter syndrome kind of went away. It was funny. It was only after I wrote them, it was like in 2017. I was going, oh, I'm kind of good at this. You know, I've been doing it.
Well, you've been
for-
writing for years. I remember reading your columns.
Yeah, but I mean, good at like
Yeah.
consulting. Like
Yeah.
I didn't even feel like, I felt like, oh, wow, I'm kind of good at this, you know, but it took
Took you
me
that long?
yeah, because part of it is being understand. I think aren't we all our harshest critics? And there's always things that I know to get better at and learn.
Especially with
and-
15 siblings, I'm sure they reminded you.
Yeah, let me tell you,
constantly about little you
always,
were.
yeah. And so I think that was probably one of the biggest things I've learned, and that I was just going through my own journey, and it was no different than what my clients. I'm going through my own succession planning right now. And we've helped clients with succession planning. And let me tell you, I'm going, oh, I love the whole different perspective of all the different emotions, everything tied into that. So,
Very good.
so that's going to be my book after sabbatical. So.
Well, and it's a similar thread I hear from people writing memoirs is they step away and they see their life more as a story, like, oh, like all of a sudden they get distance from it.
Yeah.
And when you see the words on the page, it's not so personal anymore,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
That was really good feedback. Well, thank you for your time, Michael.
Thank
I know you're
you,
very busy. This
Brian.
was a valuable hour. We're going to wrap up the Tech Reads podcast here. I'm going to stop recording. Thank you guys for joining us online.
Thanks, Bob and Rick.
Thank you for listening to Tech Reads, sponsored by SoftTech. If you enjoyed today's show, please subscribe and share it with your colleagues. If you have comments, questions, or want to suggest an author for a future episode, visit SoftTech at softec.org and click on the Tech Reads link.